Brought to you by Podcast City Network.
Due to the graphic nature of this program, listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to ELS Uncut.
Welcome to ELS Uncut. I am Everett Lee. I want to give a quick shout out to all my followers on Twitter at the Everett _Lee, Facebook.com/the Everett Lee. Click that thumbs up. And of course, Podcast City Network, the official website of ELS Uncut. Head over to podcastcity.net or head over to Facebook, facebook.com/Podcast City Network. Hit that thumbs up. And on Twitter at Podcast City Net. Well, it's been a while since I've recorded an episode of ELS Uncut. This podcast focusing on selective interviews from all walks of life, from the entertainment world, such as film directors to authors to musicians to whatever. And if you've heard the last few episodes, I've had quite a bit of a variety of people and guests on ELS Uncut. But it's been a while since I've done anything for ELS Uncut podcast for the Podcast City Network. I've been focusing on a lot of other projects, such as getting and promoting other shows on the network. I want to take this moment right here to welcome our new shows to the Podcast City Network. Chris Cartage and I have been looking and scouring, and we couldn't be much happier with this talent added to the Podcast City Network in the last couple months. I want to give a shout out to Deathmatch Russell Podcast, David C. Russell, Robin Nilsson of Wrestle Podcast, and Paranormal Files 13. And of course, Second Rounds, the New York City edition and the Florida edition. I want to give a shout out to Alex, Tommy, and the guys, and the first lady of the Podcast City Network, Ashley, Eddie, and the rest of the New York City guys, which I can't think of your names yet because I'm still trying to learn everybody. That podcast is great, and they're doing so well on the network. Couldn't be more happier to have a show like that on the network. Then, of course, the question came up about Film's a Classic. What are you going to do with Film's a Classic? You haven't done nothing lately. The last episode you recorded was back in February on Valentine's Day when you did My Bloody Valentine. Well, I'm looking at some films, trying to decide what to talk about, what to review, and who's going to come on and join me. So it's kind of up in the air right now, waiting for someone to join me. If not, I'll tackle it by myself like I did with the last one. But for right now, just wanted to roll out something new for ELS Uncut. And this week, for this episode of ELS Uncut, I have none other than from the Imaginarium podcast with Scott and Todd, Scott Colbert. Scott Colbert found out he was and has published many books in his criteria of talents, besides being one of the voices of the Imaginarium podcast on Podcast City Network. And I went through and just started looking at the criteria and just the work of art that he put out, just work being an author in the books. He's done quite a bit. You can find him on Amazon.com. If you type in Scott Colbert, author, you Google that, leads you right to Amazon.com. And a little short bio about Scott and the books that he's written, such as Barbwire Kisses, which he's known for, Detritus, collaborations such as Fossil Lake, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, Tilting at Windmills, A Journey Through Perversion, the films of John Walters, David Lynch, Beyond Coffee and Cherry Pie, and Celluloid Flesh, the films of David Cronenberg. Just a collection right there. Had Scott come on recently and we discussed his books. We discussed many other things, but movies, comic book characters, indie film directors, name drop Jack Thomas Smith, shout out to him. Also, Thomas Ryan, another indie film director, shout out to him. And it was really good. Had a good conversation, just talking and enjoying yourselves. What you did not hear, which will probably be released later on sometime in some other category or something, will be how the call got dropped about 3 times. So the interview and the discussion went on longer because there was a couple times where Scott ended up accidentally hitting airplane mode on his phone, and we disconnected a couple times. Picked it right back up, kept going and stuff, and the third time, the call was dropped. I mean, who don't experience that nowadays with phone services and cell phone services and providers? Phone service, drop calls, just a pain in the ass. Just some fucking shit that's just bad for anybody on any day of the week or any time. As I'm recording this and talking about it, hell, there's probably people getting calls dropped right now. But he came back on, and the last part of the interview, he decided to keep it on speakerphone because when he got really into the conversation, he accidentally hit airplane mode on his phone. Disconnect, call back, disconnect, call back. Last time, speakerphone, perfect. So if you notice anything in the audio, it's just the last part, he's on speakerphone. And we ended the interview that way. Really good interview. I can't wait to let you hear the discussions I had with Scott Colbert. But before we do any of that, there's a couple things I want to mention, and we're going to jump right into talking with Scott Colbert of the Imaginarium.
Hey fans, here at Podcast City Network, we have a lot of great shows.
We have a wide variety of shows that cover the landscape in podcasts, a podcast for anyone and everyone.
Such as The Chris Garnett Show,
The Everett Lee Show,
ELS Uncut,
Super Radio Brothers,
Imaginarium with Scott and Todd,
Forking Around with Cody,
The Grimlock Show,
and Films of Classic.
You can catch these and a whole bunch more only on podcastcity.net or on all of our great social media outlets.
Head over to facebook.com/Podcast City Network. Hit that thumbs up. You can send a tweet to Podcast City Network on Twitter at Podcast City Net.
So make sure that you join us for all this only on Podcast City Network.
You're listening to ELS Uncut.
Joining me today on ELS Uncut is one of the voices behind the Imaginarium podcast with Scott and Todd. And he's also a published author, which I didn't know about. Please welcome Scott Colbert. What's up?
Hey, Denver, what's going on? Thanks for having me on.
No problem.
Don't worry about not knowing I'm a published author. You're just one of among millions who don't know that. So
yeah, I didn't know that until I started seeing a lot of tweets here recently. I've listened to you and Scott, an Imaginarium podcast, for quite some time right now, and just I get so involved into the topics and stuff that you guys talk about. I know every once in a while that it's dropped that you've written books and you're an author, but I've heard it a couple times, or actually a few times on the podcast. And then once I started here recently seeing a bunch of tweets and stuff that you've been putting out there on a new book, which you'll be coming out with this October, I was like, wow. And then once I got on and started looking and seeing what you wrote, I was impressed, man. I was blown away by the criteria that you have, and just what I found off of Amazon right there. All the books, the collaborations, and the books that you've written yourself. I'm impressed, man. I'm impressed.
well, apparently it doesn't take much to impress you then, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it don't. I'm like a little kid, man. You can dangle keys in front of me. I'll be happy about it. I'll be impressed by it. Just dingle the little keys. But
and thank you so much for being such a big supporter of the Imaginarium. So, Todd and I have been doing that for, Todd and I for 3 years. I've been doing that for 3.5. And it's always nice to know that you actually do have people who listen to it. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, I enjoy it each and every week, man. Just everything you talk about, and I love the rants you guys get into. Just talking about just everything from movies to social media. I love Todd's take on social media because it reminds me of Peter Griffin. What grinds my gears, I love it.
Todd has brought a lot to the show, and I couldn't really imagine doing this show without him. Mm-hmm. And I think if he ever got tired of doing it, I would just have to stop, because I honestly couldn't find anybody as good as Todd to partner up with me. It was like catching lightning in a bottle when I asked him to be my co-host.
Mm-hmm. He's the perfect co-host, man. You guys go together so well, and it wouldn't be the same if one of you wasn't there and stuff. I know there's times where one of you are unable to come on because of stuff happens, and like being sick or something comes up. But one of you, at least you get someone in to talk to and stuff. But the episodes with you and Todd are just fantastic. I cracked up over the episode when you guys are doing the Oscar predictions. That was a good episode. I laughed, man. I'm laughing out loud. My wife's like, "What do you listen to?" And I was like, "Imaginarium." She's like, "Oh, I should have thought about knew you were listening to that."
Yeah, that's one of our favorite shows, and I think what works so well with Todd and I is generally we really have no clue what we're going to talk about until we actually start recording. Mm-hmm. There are times where we have an idea, and I'll message Todd, say, "Hey, you want to talk about whatever this week?" He's like, "Yeah, that's cool," and then that's it, and then we won't discuss anything about it until we start recording. And I like doing it that way because it keeps it fresh, it keeps it current, and neither one of us know really what the other's going to think about something. We may have an idea, but we really don't know until we start to get into something. Like we'll be talking. We're going to be recording this week. We took 2 weeks off because Todd had stuff going on. Right. And I was just too lazy to get somebody in to cover for him. But we'll be talking about the new Avengers movie this week. And I know what Todd's opinion on that is, but he doesn't know mine because I haven't mentioned anything about it. Because I like to surprise him. Right. Keep him on his toes.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what his opinion and what he has to say about that movie. I went and seen it a couple weeks ago. Me and my wife went and seen it. Fantastic, man, fantastic. I was impressed by it. It was everything I expected. Nothing more, nothing less.
Oh, I agree with you. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic too. Mm-hmm. But my take on it is, and I know it's made like $1 gazillion already. Yeah. But my take on this is, once it comes out on Blu-ray and streaming and VOD and all that other shit, yeah. I don't know if it's going to, keep that top spot as people's favorite Marvel movie, because after that comes out, then we've got all these other Marvel movies still coming out. There's a new Spider-Man movie being filmed that starts in July. Right. And then, you've got Marvel movies filled up through 2022 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So some of the characters who have died are going to have to come back somehow. Yeah. So when you start watching that movie again, DVD, it loses some of the impact, because then you realize, well, so-and-so died, but his movie's coming out next month, so, what the hell?
Yeah, and the comic book fans, the hardcore, die-core comic book fans knew from reading the comics and reading the Infinity Gauntlet series that their favorite characters that you've seen in the movies are not dead, but the fans that have not read the comics, just follow the movies, I'd say that was a big shock for them. It was a jaw dropper to see the characters what happened to them at the end of the movie. That was a jaw dropper for them. But for me, I wasn't too surprised. Well, actually, one thing I was surprised about was the outcome of Steve Rogers and Tony Stark, because I was wrong about that. I was wrong. I predicted one of them was going to, get the axe. I was wrong, man. I was wrong.
Well, and we were too. If you listened to the show a few weeks ago where we talked about Infinity War and who we thought was going to die in it, Todd and I, man, we both screwed the pooch on that. We were so wrong on what was going to happen.
I remember.
And I was glad. I mean, I was actually very happy about that. They surprised me. They actually had some balls and killed off. They killed off just about everybody who I loved. Yeah. In the Marvel Universe, which, story of my life. But
now,
then, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, when I was in the theater, the part when Black Panther came up after what Thanos did, the crowd, actually, the audience gasped. I was like, wow. I was like, I couldn't believe it. My wife was like, she gasped too. She grabbed my hand. She's like, oh my God. And everyone was like, oh. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, because, Black Panther made such a splash when it came out. I mean, it was a fantastic movie. But you don't expect what happens in Infinity Wars to happen. So when it does it, because he just made his first movie, and there's others going to be coming out because it was so successful, but to see certain characters, well, I guess we're going to give spoilers away. Certain characters, kick the bucket.
Yeah.
It still has that, little bit of a sting.
Right.
And what's funny is I was watching Civil War over the weekend, or Friday. I was watching that. Then I watched Doctor Strange again yesterday. And one of the things that oh shit, what was it? Oh wow, that thought just went totally right out of my head. So never mind. Wow.
It's happened to me before, even going live on a live podcast. Something slips on my mind, Captain America Civil War, excellent movie, right there. That was like the breakup of the Avengers, basically, choosing sides. Yeah. And then Doctor Strange was just a fantastic movie. I love that. I love that movie because I was surprised. It reminded me of Inception, the way they did it. And that was one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it did. And Doctor Strange has always been one of my favorite characters. Growing up, there was a children's album, although it's not, I wouldn't even really today call it a children's album because it was really very adult in a lot of what it talked about. But it was a rock comic is what they called it. Right. And it was basically a Spider-Man story with songs in it.
Huh.
And Rene Auberjonois actually played Spider-Man in this. And it had Kingpin and Aunt May and Doctor Strange was in it and the Green Goblin. And it was excellent. I posted about it on Facebook a few times. But it was one of my favorite Spider-Man stories ever. And it's where I absolutely fell in love with the character of Doctor Strange. He's always been one of my favorite characters, and I'm so glad that when they finally made, a major Doctor Strange movie, and I'm not talking about that shit that they put on TV. That it was as good as it was.
Yeah.
And I can't think of anybody more perfect than Inglefart Humperdumper, whatever his name is, to play Strange.
Yeah,
he does a great job.
Benedict Cumberland or Cumberbond. Yeah, he's a talented actor. He pulled it off. I mean, he had the look and everything and stuff. And I know, just like you, a lot of fans, Doctor Strange fans, was just happy that they get to see this character come on the screen, just like with the rest of the Marvel Universe. And one thing you mentioned, you said like up until 2020, Marvel's planned everything out. I loved how they planned it out.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to execute phase 1, 2, and 3, and here's what you're getting. And it led up to everything, man. Just everything in that story in Infinity War right there.
Yeah, because if you go back and watch the movies as I've been doing, you can see, the seeds being sown. And I even watched Guardians of the Galaxy 2 again, and, spoiler alert here, and we know who dies in that, but if you remember in the second one, Kurt Russell, tells Quill, you're immortal.
Yeah.
So even though he dies, he's immortal. He's going to have to come back somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they've planted these seeds, and they've really done a brilliant job in arranging and releasing these movies in a specific order. And I'm just, looking back at everything now after having seen Infinity Wars. My hat's off to Marvel. They've done a fantastic job.
Oh yeah, they've done a fantastic job with everything they've been doing in the last, you could say, like 10 years and stuff. It started with Iron Man, and then basically it ended, well, not really ended, but all the way up to Infinity War right there and everything. I had last week, or actually a couple weeks ago, we had on the Everett Lee show, I had Second Rounds podcast, the Florida edition, and we talked about our favorite Marvel characters, and we rattled off our top 5 favorite ones, and it was just a fun episode. And just seeing these characters from the pages of comics growing up to the big screen is just, it amazes me. It definitely does. And one thing I want to get out there and ask you is the Mount Rushmore, the Podcast City Network, with everyone's face on all the superheroes, that collage that I created. What'd you think about that?
I thought that was fantastic. You do some really, really good work, and I absolutely love that. I thought that was brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah, it was like trying to find the right characters and stuff, and I picked the characters I did was because of everybody. I gave you Hawkeye because you're straight to the point. When you talk about something, the topic, you're straight to the point. You never miss. That's why I gave you Hawkeye, because he's
well,
never
and
misses.
see, and I figured it was just because he was one of those minor characters nobody gave a fuck about.
I like him. Did you ever see? Did you ever see the Saturday Night Live skit where they were making fun of Hawkeye, where he ran out of arrows?
Yeah.
That was.
He always struck me like Aquaman. One of those superfluous characters that was never really needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was funny, and what was funny about that skit? They actually had Jeremy Renner actually right there.
Yeah.
It's like. Once you load up more arrows, it's like, no, it's like it'd be too full. They'll get stuck. I can't get them. It's like, well, once you use one of those other arrows you used, no, that's unsanitized. It's just so funny, man. It's just so great, man. It is. I'm looking forward to seeing Deadpool. That just came out. I'm looking forward to see that. My nephew last night texted me, said he was going to go see it, and then like 2 minutes later, he texted me back. He said, well, it looks like I'll be seeing Infinity War again. I was like, why? He's like, Deadpool sold out. I was like, damn. And I'm looking forward to seeing that, and Ant-Man and the Wasp in July. I'm looking forward to seeing the continuation of that story.
I am too. I love Deadpool, and if you go back and listen to the Imaginariums before the original or the first Deadpool came out last year, I had said that was going to make a shitload of money. I had nothing to base that on other than seeing the trailer and knowing exactly I was going to get precisely what they showed and exactly what Deadpool the comic is. And I wasn't disappointed. And nobody else was either. Because it's a fantastic movie. And I'm looking forward to the second one too.
Yeah. I'm definitely looking forward.
And even the Ant-Man movie, I'm looking forward. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I'm even looking forward to the Ant-Man movie because I loved the first one. I thought that was just an amazing little movie. I mean, certainly in the Marvel universe, it's probably one of the lesser movies, but I was thoroughly entertained by it.
Oh yeah, I was entertained. Paul Rudd, he's one of my favorite actors, and he's in one of my favorite movies with I forget the guy. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. He played Stifler in American Pie movies. You know what I'm talking about? The actor.
Yeah, I know which one you mean.
Him and Paul. What is his name? I can't think of his name.
Something Scott.
Yes. Yeah, William Scott or something like that. I'll have to look it up. But him and Paul Rudd did a movie back, I think, in 2009. It became one of my favorite movies. It's called Role Models. You ever seen that?
No, I've heard of it.
Oh man, it's hilarious. Him and Paul Rudd, they're like salespeople. They're selling this energy drink, and they get in trouble at the school where they basically do something stupid, and they have to serve community. They have to go to jail or do community service, and they have to meet up. They meet up with Kelly Lynch, and she's this community service person, and they become like big brothers, like the program for like big brothers. And the kids they get, I think, what's his name? Stifler gets this one little black kid who's just like running all over the place, kicking him in the shins, and jumps in his car and he did a parking lot in his Jeep, and he's driving around in circles. And Paul Rudd gets the guy who plays McLovin from Superbad. He gets him. He does like the live action role playing, the LARPing, and he's always walking around wearing a cape, and he's trying to make him like not wear the cape. It's hilarious.
Sean William Scott.
Sean William Scott.
That's
yeah.
what you're thinking of.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's a hilarious movie, man. It is, and it's just the hijinks is so funny and everything, and it has a really good soundtrack. Yeah, you have to check it out. It's a really good laugh, man. I enjoyed it. I mean, they have some surprise guest appearances in there in the movie and stuff, but it's one of my favorite movies. I can watch that over and over because it's just hilarious. It is, and
I will have to look for that. Hopefully, that's on Netflix or Amazon Prime or something.
It probably is on Amazon Prime. You should probably look it up. I'm sure it's on there. I know they got like a bunch of movies on there. I was Thomas Ryan. He recommended that I watch Faces. He said it was on Amazon Prime. So
right.
That was last month, I think. I got on Amazon Prime and I found this movie and I watched it and I loved it. I thought it was great, and I messaged him. I told him, and he was like thanks. And I even got on there and wrote a review for him. I mean, it was neat, you know, that Amazon Prime can have movies like that from a independent director such as Thomas Ryan.
Oh, absolutely. Amazon in general has really done a lot for indie artists, whether it's for music, for movies, or for writing.
Mm-hmm.
The books that I have out, particularly the collections of essays on the different film directors, nobody else would have touched those. So I had to put those out myself,
mm-hmm.
and that never would have been possible if it hadn't been for Amazon. Now, Amazon, of course, does things that, I don't particularly care for or understand sometimes, but I will never begrudge them trying to make money, because if it weren't for them, I wouldn't have any of my stuff out.
Right.
Or most of it I wouldn't have out. So, I have to, thank them for that. And they've helped indie movies incredibly. Jay Proctor, my buddy from the UK filmmaker, he has a lot of his stuff up on Amazon Prime in the UK and over here in the States. And it's made him, it allowed him to continue making other movies and continuing his, his writing as well.
Right.
And so I'm really, really happy that Amazon lets people do what they do. And Faces is a fantastic movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Ryan is really such a great guy. He's been on the show a few times.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love him.
I do too. I love talking with him and just the work he puts out there. I feel bad for like people I have on like Thomas Ryan and other like people, indie directors and indie like producers producing stuff for the indie scene. I feel bad because it's like they put out like the GoFundMe and Indiegogo's, and it's like I try my best. I mean, just talking with them and just getting their voice out with what I do with podcast, and just retweeting, liking, and sharing on social media their stuff. And I feel bad because it's like I reach in my pocket and it's like, damn,
Yeah.
It's like damn, man. It's like I feel bad because it's like like Todd said, and it hit me hard because he's like, putting stuff out there. He made a point on social media. It's like people who's like, I support indie film and stuff he shares. No one shares and everything. And it's like contributing. But it's like for right now, I feel that's how I can contribute until basically my wife, takes her hand off my wallet there. Gives me my allowance so I can spend it,
Yeah.
But it's it's like I know nowadays everyone's strapped for cash, but it's good that some people can actually contribute and help out the indie the indie scene with these people trying to get their art out there. And I feel bad that I haven't tossed in a dime, but I try with getting them on and talking with them and just getting their voice out there, let people hear them.
Well, that's just about as important as funding it. Giving people the exposure. Anybody can throw money at a project. That's always, that's always appreciated.
Right.
But not everybody has a podcast and has an audience and has the ability to give people like Tom Ryan or myself or Todd or any other indie artists the exposure. And even just putting out a review like you did for Tom's movie Faces, that helps so much. You don't even know how much that helps.
Right.
And that's actually harder than getting people to throw money at something, is to get somebody to leave a review. It is the hardest goddamn thing in the world.
Right.
It's like pulling teeth to get people to leave a review.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I ended up also, I think actually, thinking back now, Jack Thomas Smith, I gave a review for Infliction when I first started talking to him, when I started doing a podcast. I gave a review for him. He asked me, he said, would you mind just writing a review for me? I said, sure, no problem. So I jumped on IMDb where he had has his movie up. I gave a review, and Tom Ryan is actually the second person I given a review to. And now I'd like to give more reviews now since you mentioned that, because I feel good that giving him, Thomas Ryan, and Jack Thomas Smith reviews on their films, that actually helps. So, yeah, I think I'm going to start giving more reviews now. That's great.
Yeah, they do help. And talking about Jack Thomas Smith for a minute, I have to give a shout out to him because I interviewed him through. He had a publicist, and I forget her name, but she put me in touch with him to do an interview with him about inflection. And then I ended up interviewing the two male leads and one of the female leads for the Imaginarium. And this was before Todd and I had even met.
Right.
And Jack Thomas Smith introduced me to Jeremiah Kitt, and then Jeremiah introduced me to Tom Ryan, and Tom introduced me to Todd. And that through Jack Thomas Smith, I was able to be introduced to just about everybody in the indie horror scene in the tri-state area.
Right.
So, I will always be grateful to Jack because he was really responsible for almost all of my guests up until Todd joined the show.
He's a good guy, man.
He's really he's a nice guy. And it was a really fun interview that I had with him, too.
Yeah, Jack's just fantastic to talk to, man. I love talking to him. I had him on one episode even just talking about The Walking Dead. We were talking about season 5 back then. That was just so fantastic. I even got to talk with, through him, Manny Del Rio, and of course I got to talk to the two leads from Infliction and the female, Anna Shaw, Elliot Armstrong, and Jason Mack. Yes, I got to talk to them. And the thing is, Jack reached out to me because when I started out podcasting, I got to a point where I was just about to say, you know what? This ain't working for me. I'm done. I was about to hang it up, and I said to myself, I'm going to record one last episode, and I don't know what or care what it is. Jack reaches out to me and says, you want to do an interview? I was like, okay. So I interviewed Jack. During that interview, listening to Jack talk about passionately creating movies and everything, that gave me a spark. It gave me like a little spark. It's like, you know what? If he can do what he does and keep going no matter what, I can do the same thing. And I'm glad I jumped back on that horse, and I'm still riding it, man.
Yeah, when I started the Imaginarium, I really had no compunctions about, having an audience or anything like that.
Right.
I just did it because people had kept suggesting that I should do one. My two co-hosts from the Supernatural State Show, from back in the day, they kept suggesting that I should do it. And
right.
So I did it. And, Todd and I talked about this from time to time. We do it because we like doing it. We enjoy it. We have a lot of fun doing it. And even the same with my books. When Barbwire Kisses came out several years ago, originally through a small press, and then I re-released it on my own. I had no qualms about whether it was going to, sell anything or not, and it's done fairly well. I mean, I'm surprised it sold as much as it has over the last 2 years.
Right.
I'm happy about that. But even if it didn't, we do these things because it's in our blood.
Yeah.
To paraphrase a Stephen King quote, and it's something that Todd has mentioned several times. Somebody asked Stephen King, why do you write the things that you write? And he's like, well, why do you assume I have a choice? And that's kind of like indie artists. Why do you keep doing it when, you put out more than you get back, at least on financial terms?
Yeah.
And we don't have a choice. This is what we do.
Yeah.
If we don't do it, then we end up in a loony bin somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's our vice, man. It's our vice.
Yeah.
And it is. And since you're talking about your books, I got your page up here on Amazon and just looking at your books. And yeah, I'm looking at Barbwire Kisses right now, and it's been out there since April 26th of 2013, and you got a pretty damn good review on it, because I was reading the customer reviews, and you've got yourself a hella story. I mean, just reading the description of it, I would never thought about like reading a story like this about two serial killers in the West in search of gold. That's pretty neat. I never heard of anything like that. Could you go into talking about how you came up with the idea for this book and what it's about?
Yeah. Well, originally, I had the idea that I wanted to do a serial killer story.
Uh-huh.
And at the time that I started thinking about that, I was working for a customer service company. And my idea was the serial killer would actually, get the victims from, from the database of customers. Because
Right.
he would be a customer service rep. And then I thought, you know what? Trying to figure out, all of the technology and, and trying to make sure that he would be able to do these things without getting caught. That's a lot of fucking work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that I'm willing to put in the effort it would take to make sure that I got all of that technology correct.
Right.
So I thought, well, let me try and do something a little bit different. Go back to a time before there was all this technology.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started looking up serial killers. And then I started looking up, well, who was the first serial killer in the U.S.? And then I came across the Hart brothers.
Uh-huh.
And the Hart brothers they think they were actually cousins. But they lived in North Carolina, I think. And they were headed west, but this was in the 1700s, late 1700s.
Right.
And they killed about 40 people. And one of them actually killed his own daughter by bashing her head against a tree.
Damn.
And so I thought, well, this would be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of based everything off of them, but I set it 100 years ahead rather than the actual time frame, because again, there was a lot of stuff that required a little bit too much research on my part, and that part I'm just really pretty lazy. So I just kind of took the idea of the Hart brothers and ran with it, and then I was actually watching Deadwood at the time that I was writing it.
Right.
And so I was heavily influenced by Deadwood. And that's where that came about. And, it's funny because, when people say, well, how do you get your ideas? I went from, 21st century or 20th century at the time, customer service serial killer to the Old West. These are connections that most people don't make. But,
Right.
It just seemed common sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's neat, because reading the reviews, people are talking about, I like how this one review said, I'm trying to find it right here. Where is it right here? Okay. Where is it right here? Yeah, it says, this ebook nearly broke my index finger as I furiously swiped my Kindle to the next page. I could not put it down. One person said, I like this right here. They said, I can't find it. But they said this book, basically, when you pick it up, it grabs you by the throat and doesn't let go until the very end. I thought that was really great. I was like, wow. And even what was it on here? You mentioned David Lynch, right?
Oh, my David Lynch collection. Yeah.
David Lynch. He even made a I guess a comment about Barbwire Kisses, if I'm correct, which I thought was pretty fantastic, man. And it's probably because of the book here. I love the front cover of it, the David Lynch Beyond Coffee and Cherry Pie.
Yeah.
A collection of...
Yeah. All my covers were done by my friend Joe Adams. Joe and I go back. He and I met in the late 80s.
Uh-huh.
So he and I have been friends for a very long time. So all of the covers for all of my books, with the exception of the new one coming out in October, have been done by Joe.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know what... This is kind of new for me, a collection of essays. Can you elaborate, explain what that means right there? Because as like a collection of essays, I'm going to take a guess right here. Is it a breakdown of how you describe the films?
The essays, they're basically movie reviews. I just call them essays because I was never very comfortable calling myself a movie reviewer, because I'm not. I'm a movie fan.
Right.
But a couple of friends and I, very quickly, because this is a very convoluted story, two other friends and I started a website about 3 years ago called the Supernauts.
Uh-huh.
And prior to that, we had worked on a website called Talkbacker. And on Talkbacker, I started posting, well, the first ones were the John Water reviews.
Right.
And then when we all went and did the Supernauts, I continued and then did the David Lynch and the Terry Gilliam and the Dave Cronenberg stuff.
Right.
And I wanted to put them all together because I knew at some point, the website, wasn't, going to last forever.
Right.
And I really wanted to keep, and I put a lot of work into these. So I decided that I would put them into a collection and throw them up as an ebook, which is, what I did. And they've sold. They still sell very well. And I just put them up in paperback form because Amazon has made it so that it's easy to make any ebook into a paperback now.
Oh,
and
that's
it took me about a half an hour to do all 5 of the ebooks that I had.
Right.
And let's see, where was I going with that? Oh, so I put them out, and the paperbacks are actually selling better than my ebooks now. So go figure.
Yeah. People just love having the physical book. They love holding that book in their hand and stuff. That's one of the books of essays, and the other one I think looks really neat is A Journey Through Perversion, the John Walter. The films of John Walter.
My John Waters book. Yeah, that was the first one that came out.
Uh-huh.
And I love John Waters movies, from Pink Flamingos up through Dirty Shame. I talk about all of his movies, and even though I'm a huge fan of his movies and of all the directors that I've written about, I'm not a fan of all of the movies they've made, because like anybody else, they do some shitty stuff too.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm honest about that, and I think that's probably why they do so well, is because I'm honest about them. And, none of these are really ass-kissing type of things. That's just not me. I can't do that.
Right.
And in fact, I told Todd in the beginning when he and I first started doing Imaginarium together that, if we had somebody on and I saw their work and I didn't like it, or we had somebody scheduled to be on, I should say, and I saw their work and didn't like it, I'm not going to tell them how much I loved it on air or anything like that. I won't do that.
Right.
And we haven't to this day.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I looking at the other one too, the celluloid flesh, the films of David Cronenberg. I'm looking at that one too. Those are 3 books with essays talking about just their films and stuff. And I'm impressed with the reviews and the feedback you've gotten on them, man. I mean, it's neat, you know, and it's fantastic. And just skimming down, just like scrolling through, looking at your books and stuff. You did also. There's a collaboration with Joe Adams, Tilting at Windmills, and
Well, that wasn't so much a collaboration. He just did the artwork.
Oh,
but,
okay.
When I put that out, at the time, the way that Amazon has things set up when you start to publish an ebook, it didn't have like art by or cover by. Or if it did, I just screwed up and said, collaboration. I forget how it looks on the website.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Joe just does all the covers. Now there are a couple of books. The David Lynch book has a foreword by Nick Knightley, and he was one of the guys who used to work with Talkbacker. And he and a partner of his used to have a fantastic podcast called the Shut Up Kids podcast.
Yes.
And that was actually where I got my podcast start. I was a guest on their show 3 years ago, I guess. 4 years ago, actually.
Oh.
And I was talking about the John Waters book and then the David Cronenberg book several months later. So, and, I got that taste of being on a podcast, and I got a lot of positive feedback about it. And, it's like a drug, once you get that positive feedback and, hearing yourself on a podcast, you want more and more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you do, of course. I mean, like, I was lucky and just, happy for being guest on podcasts myself, man. So far, I've been on as a guest, I've been on, I did the hot seat challenge for the Super Radio Brothers. I've done that in the last 3 years with them at the Daytona Beach Comic Convention, just doing that little appearance there. But I have to give you and Todd credit. You guys are actually the first ones to actually sit me down and actually interview me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You and Todd.
That's nice to know.
I know. You and Todd, and then Chris Carnage. He had me on as a guest on his one of his episodes. And then yesterday, on Saturday, I went over to out to Kissimmee, past Orlando, which was Highway to Hell. I want to play AC/DC Highway to Hell every time I go down there, back and forth. It took me all day just to get to where I needed to go and back because bad weather and traffic. And I sat in with Tommy for the Florida edition, the second rounds, which was pretty good. But it's neat just being a guest and stuff because it's just fantastic. And yeah, it's like with your situation being a guest on a podcast, it's like wow, it gives you a way, an outlet to put stuff out there that you're passionate about and to talk about, and also get people who feel the same way about what you do to come in and share that experience with you each and every week.
Oh yeah, and this is actually I would say really like my first real interview on a podcast. I've been on other podcasts, but like I said, when I was on the Shut Up Kids podcast, I talked about my books for about 2 minutes, but everything else was about movies and whatever else we talked about on that particular episode.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a couple other podcasts that, I've been on talking about specific topics, but never being interviewed or anything like that. So
Right.
this is really kind of cool, having really kind of my first interview on a podcast.
That's cool. I'm glad to be part of it,
You
man.
took my cherry. You took my cherry.
If I had the soundboard up, I would play something, but I don't. That's
You can edit
good.
that in.
I'm glad to be your first there. Hope I was gentle. What is it? Movie White Chicks with the Wayans brothers? Terry Crews. I don't love that line. It's like you need a wheelchair. Oh man, it's so great. It's so great. I love the collection of books, and I actually got a book out there. I put out like in December 2015, a little short story book that it took me probably about 3 years to write, and I finally got it published. I put it out there, and I sold some pretty good. It sold all right. Mostly close friends and family bought it, which I was happy with. But also too, I said to myself, I was like, no one's ever mentioned it about reading it. So it's like I didn't hear nothing back. It's like, oh, I bought your book. Oh yeah, did you like it? Yeah, I'm in the middle of reading it right now. Oh, I just bought it. It's like, yeah, you read it. You don't want to fucking tell me you didn't like it, or you're like, what was you thinking? That's what I'm thinking about.
Then it took Todd 3 years to buy fucking Barbwire Kisses.
It took how long?
And he still 3 years, and he still hasn't read the goddamn thing yet.
Todd?
Todd, yeah.
What? Man, what's up, Todd?
So probably be 3 years before he buys the new book coming out in October. I mean, and then another 3 years. I'll be dead by the time he reads the new one.
What can you tell me about Life in Amber? What can we expect? It comes out in October. What little detail or what can you say about your latest project?
Well, it's funny because nobody really knows anything about this one. Mm-hmm. When I wrote Barbwire Kisses, I talked about that every place I could imagine. I couldn't shut up about it.
Right.
But with this one, I haven't said much about it because, well, first of all, I wanted to make sure I finished the fucking thing. Because it took me 10 years to finish my second book. I mean, the essays were different. They were already written. All I had to do was put those together and throw them out there.
Right.
But to write a second novel, it's really hard because you still get kind of that idea of, was the first one a fluke? Was it really good like people said, or were they just being nice? And it kind of stalls your ability to do the second one.
Right.
But I persevered, and I started it August of last year, and I just finished it in April. It's in the editing process now. So nobody really knows anything about it, not even Jay. But basically, it's about a man named Evan DeFort who wins the lottery. And he's lived a life of regret. And he feels that now that he's won this lottery, he's able to go back and kind of correct his mistakes of the past.
Right.
But the problem is, when he does that, those people end up dying.
Oh.
So that's the premise.
That's the premise. Wow. That sounds neat. It's kind of remind me of money. Money can't solve everything.
Yeah, exactly. And I call it a horror novel, although as I've been editing it before it goes off to my actual editor. It's not really horrific. I really don't know what genre I would put it in. People who have read Barbwire Kisses will be very surprised by this, because it's a total 180 from the tone of Barbwire Kisses.
Right.
It's about as different from that as you can get. And I didn't necessarily plan it that way. It just kind of happened.
Right.
I think I would call this maybe like a dark adventure novel, because there's a lot of road trip type stuff in it. So maybe that's what I'll call it, dark adventure.
Yeah, a dark adventure. That sounds good, because with him trying to fix things, and with after winning the lottery, and with the stuff he's trying to fix, and people dying. Yeah, I mean, what kind of go on an adventure?
And he's got his best friend with him, and he gets visited by his dead cat quite often, and he has visions of amber colored coffins and balloons and stuff like this. And quickly, I have to thank Todd for this book. I don't know if you saw it, but last summer Todd posted a video up on Facebook, and it was just of a balloon floating through the office of a hotel that he was staying at.
Yeah, I think.
And at one point, the balloon just kind of turns, almost as if it's looking at him while he's filming it. And it was the creepiest thing I had ever seen. And that's where my book starts, is with that balloon. And if Todd had never posted that video, this book never would have been written.
Wow.
So, it's another one of those, where do you get your ideas from? Well, that's another place I got the idea from, was Todd.
I like it, man. I like that. It's like the short story I wrote back in 2015. What happened was the idea of it stuff came up in 2011, and at that time a lot of stuff was going on. I think I just proposed to my wife. I just proposed to her. A lot of stuff was happening, situation, everything that we're in, and I remember we were staying at my mother-in-law's, her mom's house, and I can probably blame Jim Bean's or Devil Cut for this. I worked night shift. I came home one morning, and I just started drinking Jim Bean, the Devil's Cut with Coke. I got shit-faced drunk. I was off the next day, okay? I was shit-faced drunk. By 11, 12 o'clock, I'm still awake after working all night, drunk. My wife, at the time, fiance, she's like, go to bed. You're drunk. I'm like, okay, so I passed out. I had a dream. I was at a party, and there was like a party at this house I remember back in Ohio. It was a friend's house, and it was like a bunch of people there having a party. There was a guy in a gorilla costume running around with a bottle of Jack, doing like the train thing, like the like the da 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 da. You know what I'm talking about? I forget what you call that. I was like, what the hell? And I woke up, and I was like, my wife was like, what the? You okay? Because I was making noises, or like she said, I was talking out loud and saying something. I think she said I was saying no or something, and I told her what I dreamed of. She was like, she looked at the Devil's Cut empty bottle, and I looked at it, and I was like, I ain't drinking that shit anymore before I go to sleep. Excuse me. So the idea for one of the things in the book that I wrote, I incorporated that in the book. Basically, it's like that right there was going to be in it, but I wanted to build a story leading up to that, and I did. I created the story, and it led to that part right there, which was like fantastic. And I thought it was good. I thought it was really good how I collaborated that with the idea, and It's just amazing what sometimes alcohol can do for you. In a good way.
Alcohol and dreams.
Yes. Alcohol and dreams. But I'm glad it didn't turn me into the devil, or maybe dream about the devil. It's like, you ever see that movie?
Yes.
You ever see that movie with Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang called what is it? Dirty Work?
No, I haven't.
There's a part in there where they're running around trying to get extra money, and they're doing like the experiment things where you get paid, and they ate some brownies and stuff, and Artie Lang's sitting there, and he's like, no side effects, huh? And then Norm Macdonald is driving, he's sitting there all freaking out, sweating and hiving and everything, and he turns out and looks, and what's his name from Silver Spoons is in the car looking at him, and there's like fire all around, and Adam Sandler's in front of him, dressed up like the devil, like roasting a pig, and he's like, hey, we take the pig off the thing and we eat it, and he's all freaking out, and he looks over at Gary Oldman, or Gary, what's his name, from Silver Spoons, not Gary Oldman,
Ricky Schroeder?
Yeah, Rick. Yeah, or not Silver Spoons. Different Strokes. Willis.
Todd Bridges.
Not Todd. The
Barry Coleman.
Yeah. He's like, he looks at Norm Macdonald, and he looks at Adam Sandler's devil. He goes, "What you talk about, Satan?" I thought that was like one of the best things. Thank God I didn't dream nothing like that, man.
Yes, never say never.
I know. Never say never.
And that's one of the great things about writing is you're able to incorporate your fucked up dreams and your fucked up life, and there's a lot of stuff in Life in Amber that's very autobiographical, and there's a lot that's not.
Right.
And I'll let people decide, what they think is real and what isn't, because that'll be fun.
Uh-huh.
But it's real. It's a cathartic way of getting a lot of stuff out. Because I think writers, as a general rule, are some of the most disturbed and fucked up people walking the face of the earth.
Oh yeah,
we really are. We are not a well lot
right.
by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
And I can only imagine how even worse we might be if we didn't have these outlets like writing or podcasts or movies or whatever.
Right. Yeah, or Vice, man. It's definitely like our Vice and stuff. One thing I didn't mention, you're talking about doing like 180 turns on writing. What was it? Stephen King. He did. I think it was. He wrote a book about the Temptations, and people are like, "Wow, that's awesome, man!"
Yeah.
It's like, who thought he could have wrote a good book? And then the next book he released is like, "Damn, Pet Cemetery."
And then he wrote one about the Red Sox too.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is age. As you get older. Your perspective on things just change. Yeah. And when I wrote Barbwire Kisses, I was 42. 42. And I'll be 53 in August. So that's a little bit over a decade. That's a long stretch.
Yeah.
And what interested me 10 years ago isn't the same thing that interests me now. And it's funny, a lot of people, talk about David Cronenberg's later movies and how much they suck and this and that because, he gave up body horror. The guy's 70 fucking years old. Do you still do the same shit that you did when you were 30?
Yeah.
Well, I know some people do. They just never grow up.
Yeah.
But, people change. They evolve.
Yeah.
It's called maturity.
Exactly. It definitely is. It is called maturity, and it just it just shows, man, with like your work and everything and stuff. It just does.
Well, and I say that knowing full well I have a lot of fart and dick jokes in the new book too. So not quite mature.
Yeah. I mean, those never get old.
Well, no, they don't.
No, they never do. Never do. Before we wrap up here, I wanna thank you for coming on and taking time out to talk with me about everything we talked about with our love for comic books, your work of writing, and the technical difficulties that we had, which will be edited out. It'd probably be shown later for a blooper reel. But
Yeah.
I want to thank you, and I love talking with you. You know, each time I talk with you, and I love each and every week what you and Scott do. I mean, what you and Todd do. There's a blooper reel there. I love what you and Scott do on the Imaginarium. Yeah, I love what you and Todd do each and every week, delivering podcast and doing what you do and entertaining the masses and bringing your podcast to the Podcast City Network. You guys have been tearing it up, and it's just been great and fantastic.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you had me on. It's always nice to have a little bit of recognition, but I really do want to thank you for having us on the Podcast City Network. It's allowed us to get new people, new listeners, and so we're reaching a totally different audience than what we did, say, maybe a year ago, and definitely 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And we wouldn't have been able to have done that without you in Podcast City. So, Todd and I, from the bottom of our hearts, really do thank you for that.
You're welcome, man. You're welcome. You're definitely welcome. Before we do close, you want to plug anything?
Well, you can check out my books on Amazon. Just do a search on my name, Scott Colbert, on Amazon, and they'll come up. You can find me on Facebook, again, Scott Colbert, and on Twitter, the same thing. My name, my handles are really boring on social media. It's my name. I figure that's the easiest way to find me. So if you want to follow me or friend me, do whatever you want to do, send me hate mail or whatever, that's the way to do it. And of course, every Monday, we have a new episode of the Imaginarium coming out.
That's awesome, man. I love it. Thank you for coming on, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed this.
Me too. Anytime.
Do it! Just do it! No, what are you waiting for? Do it!
Want more ELS? The Everett Lee Show podcast is available at the following. Download the audio version of this podcast and previous podcast at everettleeshow.libsyn.com, stitcher.com, Everett Lee Show. Leave us a rating and a comment in the comments section. iTunes, subscribe to ELS, the Everett Lee Show on iTunes. Give us a rating and a comment. For the video version of this podcast and previous podcasts, visit youtube.com, Everett Lee Show. For interview segments, visit dailymotion.com/Everett Lee Show.
Just do it! Yes, you can! Just do it!
ELS, the Everett Lee Show, is your shot of entertainment to the head. I want to thank Scott Colbert. Thank you, man, for coming on, chatting with me. We had a good time talking about comic book movies, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Your books, cannot wait for in October when Life in Amber is released. I'm sure I'll have him back on, and then later on, I'm trying to get both Scott and Todd on ELS Uncut. I'm waiting for that because I know that's going to be one hell of a podcast with those guys, because when those two are together and with me in the middle, all hell, no takers, man. It's going to be good. So I'm trying to work that out sometime in the future. I don't know when that's going to be, when Todd's schedule is clear to go and Scott and mine line all up. Be sure to check out an episode in the future on ELS Uncut with all three of us. And I will tell you this, I do not know where it's going to go or end up. I may not have to edit that one because it's going to be really good conversation. But again, I want to thank Scott for coming on, taking time out, and sorry about the 3 call drops, which will probably be released in a blooper reel sometime later this year of a best of 2018 moments. But again, check out Podcast City Network on podcastcity.net. Check out Podcast City Network on social media, facebook.com/Podcast City Network. Hit that thumbs up. And of course on Twitter, send a tweet to Podcast City Network over on Twitter at Podcast City Net. I am Everett Lee, and I am out of here. Be sure to check me out again on ELS Uncut and the many other shows that I'll be bringing to you on the Podcast City Network. Signing off, have a good day, good night, and we'll see you again next time.